Hi there and welcome to the CyberHut vendor introduction series. My name is Simon Moffat, I'm founder and analyst at the CyberHut. In these vendor introduction series, I get a privileged job of interviewing identity security leaders from all around the globe to understand a little bit more about their mission and vision to solve some of today's critical and emerging problems. And absolutely thrilled to have Jay from Hydden with me. Jay, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Simon. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Not at all. Well, thanks for taking some time out. I always say that because I do appreciate how busy and exciting it is trying to build startups and deliver some fantastic software. And for people who have not seen one of these episodes before, I essentially get to ask our esteemed guests three very important questions to really understand a little bit about the sort of mission and vision that Jay and the team are looking to achieve. So question number one is essentially, what is the problem that Hydden are looking to solve?
Great. So Simon, thanks for having me. I think in a nutshell, when you think about identity and access management, I think for too long we have treated identity and access management as an access problem, right? Or identity security as an access problem. When we think about things like PAM, when we think about things like stronger MFA, advanced authorization controls, what we're really talking about is treating the problem of identities inside of digital infrastructure and creating more gates, creating more walls, creating things and more barriers that people need to hop through. And to me, while that's a very important dimension of the overall problem, it's not the only one. And for us at Hydden, identity is fundamentally a data problem. Identities are at rest. Identities are in motion. Identities are scattered across your infrastructure, cloud apps, on-prem, edge devices, IoT, OT devices, they're everywhere. And so the true job of really defending against cyber criminals, right, in 2025 is being able to understand where all identities are, what's actually happening inside the environment and ecosystem, and being able to develop a system that can tell the end user, tell the security team, you need to focus on this, you need to focus on that. You got a big problem with accounts that are lacking in strong MFA over here. You may just want to click a couple buttons and help resolve that immediately. And so when we think about that sort of basket of issues, we're actually really helping to drive a paradigm shift in the industry, right? Just not creating yet another identity control product, but really getting at this question of visibility.
I love that. Yeah, I think there's loads of things there. As a data problem, I think this is quite a powerful thing which has emerged the last sort of 2 or 3 years, I guess. Where you're right, we have a lot of identity data now. We have more identities, we have more systems being integrated. This whole hybrid landscape thing, and it's taking it in a slightly different way, I think. Instead of, as you say, thinking about there's PAM, there's IGA, these sort of lumps, if you like, or pillars, and saying, well, what's the data across, horizontally across all of those systems? Quite a powerful concept, I think.
And one dimension of that for us is, part of the reason we started it is, we've seen so many of these problems explode on the front lines, me and the founding team. And I think we've seen so many companies that have spent so much in all this different tooling, real enterprise grade PAM and IGA solutions, and attacks are still happening. And then when you really look under the covers, you see that only maybe 15-20% of the capabilities were deployed. The controls weren't fully mature and implemented. It's because those identity threats, the real ones that matter to the company or the security team, they're hidden in the gaps of those existing tools. So they're in part of the genesis of the word hidden, of the name Hydden, right? And so for us, our job is to bring them to the surface, make them visible so you can act.
I love that. Just switching the name, it is, you're right, because I think identity is becoming this silos, there are gaps, different measurements of success, interoperability issues. You're right, there are, I think historically we've thought in resources, not thought about horizontal information flows, so absolutely hidden. That's good. Making things less
100%.
That's good. All right, so that leads us into sort of question number two, ultimately, is why is this becoming out? Is it the fact, we have maybe these legacy systems are sort of resource centric and don't have full coverage? Is it we just have more identities, more stuff to deal with, or is it maybe a combination of this? And obviously, the bad guys have identified this is an attack surface, I presume, as well.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of those things. There's no one in sort of done answer to it, but I think I could say this, which is the identity security market is just fundamentally misaligned with how attackers operate, how they think, how they behave, and is misaligned with the actual incentives that the security executives have to undertake real serious massive transformation of all their existing tools and controls and systems. Okay. The threat actors, the ones that are like penetrating these large scale banks and healthcare organizations, critical infrastructure operators, they're not seeing a PAM problem. They're not seeing an IGA problem. They see a spectrum of identities, of accounts, of relationships between these things across all of these different systems. And they see 1,000 different paths of compromise, right? So the challenge for overhauling these fragmented systems makes like that actual transformation nearly impossible. So a lot of CISOs, security teams, are stuck with the tools that they have. So you mentioned this word legacy, right? Like legacy, I think, is given a bad name in the industry. To me, when I think of legacy tools, they might be fully operational in a large scale bank in something that's completely mission critical that you depend on, but it probably has a data model or an underlying architecture that really was never designed for a world that is potentially cloud first, or maybe a company that we just acquired that we are merging into our parent company that is all cloud first and we're all on-prem first. So now we're getting at this heart of like that tectonic shift that's happening, right? When you look at like the fact that these numbers are absurd, 90% of companies are having like suffering identity attacks. Look, they've had every single tool under the sun in most cases. We've seen them all. We've talked to them all. In many cases, we've built so many of them ourselves. And it's not due to a shortage of tools. It's not due to a shortage of people. It's operationalizing these technologies. They're fragmented. They don't communicate. I always use this analogy that like most identity stacks are like, having siblings who aren't on speaking terms at the dinner table. Right? It gets like super awkward when they can't talk about like important things that they need to talk about. But that's like the reality that we face here. The PAM tool is not talking to the IGA tool. It's not talking to your access management tool. They're all like hoarding their own data. Back to the data problem. Like your IGA tool is a bureaucracy. Your PAM tool is just like a little vault. And your access management job is like all it's there to do is get the end user access to the resources. It's those gaps between those things. You need to communicate. That's what Hydden does. Find all that data. It's all about interoperability for us in connective tissue.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating stuff. I think absolutely spot on as well. Identity is moving away historically from being this sort of operational component, if you like, sitting within IT in the CIO world doing just a bit of employee productivity, and then you have a bit of governance there because you have to for compliance. Then you say, oh well, we have high risk, so we'll do that PAM thing, and then that doesn't work. So you go, oh well, we need an MFA solution, and then suddenly you have 5 or 6 MFA solutions because usability, budget, different systems, different applications. So you sort of snowball this identity debt, if you like. But as you say, they're not built to communicate with each other. Protocols, interop, the data flow, ownership, operations, metrics, it's all very, very fragmented.
It's all very, very fragmented. And like, let's face it, like you're an identity leader or a CISO that has 14 different identity tools. Like, congratulations, right? Like, try explaining that to your board when you get hit because one account didn't have MFA, or an attacker used a new TTP that got into an edge device and then persisted on that edge device by like creating a bunch of local accounts that you simply had no way to detect, or it took your Splunk a month to detect that. Like, those are the things that we think about here, right? Where it's like, it's not necessarily about the tool explosion, but like, let's wake up. It's 2025. This is a Netflix versus Blockbuster type of moment. You either got to adapt to the reality around you that like Gen AI and all these fancy things are happening, and they're easier ways for an attacker to penetrate your organization and get in and like evade detection, or you got to like actually do something about it. And so that's, for us, we're all about like action, like take movement. And by the way, get coverage over the entire identity attack surface, not just your cloud apps, which are like nice and clean and cookie cutter and this, that with like modern standards, but it's all the legacy stuff. Back to that word. It's all the stuff that's not so much as fun to deal with. Mainframes, old variants of Linux, vSphere, Palo Alto network, edge devices, all of those things to us are the attack surface. Take that identity-centric mindset towards it by grabbing identities everywhere. pulling it back.
Great stuff. It's like a blanket, it's a security blanket for our identity world.
It's very comforting. Blanket analogy. I'll use that, Simon.
You can have that one for free. So that sort of wraps up to the last final question, I suppose, is we build this problem statement, clearly a valid problem, a growing problem, I think, ultimately. So what is your sort of secret sauce here? How are you sort of tackling this and trying to solve some of these things we've been discussing?
Yeah, sure. So like our founding team are lead architects, product leaders from some of the leading identity security vendors that exist today. We've built a range of the different PAM and IGA tools that are in like Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. We've seen a lot of these problems over the past decade, thinking about things like SolarWinds and Colonial Pipeline play themselves out in the front lines. So it's that innate, deep understanding from like the practitioner dimension of it that I think gives us the leading edge. I also think that there's a big aspect of our platform that gives us sort of a winning formula in a lot of organizations. Look, we sort of treat our universe, our TAM, as like the companies that are hybrid and hybrid multi-cloud. You've got a lot of different cloud infrastructure. You're running stuff on-prem in data centers, or you might be all cloud today, but you're not tomorrow when you acquire a company that has like its own full-blown like data center presence. The fact that we can deploy anywhere, and like we literally mean anywhere, and you can just get it up and running in 15 minutes, fantastic. The fact that we can connect to anything, our North Star, our brand promise, and do it seamlessly in turnkey, another fantastic sort of dimension of this. But the fact that you can also do this at scale. Look, we've been deployed in organizations that have had 70,000 identities, human users inside of a range of different Active Directories. And we've been able to not only run discovery continuously in those environments, not once a week, not once a day, multiple times a day, but we can do it at scale, and we can hold on to that data at scale. And we also make it so easy for the SecOps team, for the security team to be able to go back in time because of the beauty of some of that secret sauce of our data model and of our architecture to really help streamline investigations. I want to see what accounts belong to Simon on June 7th. Right, because it's those types of use cases that really matter to us. And we spent so long just really perfecting this, doing the user research, talking to the customers. And we've been very happy being able to onboard new users to our platform. You can get a trial at hidden.com. It's fantastic. And we're super excited about the future.
Good stuff. That's absolutely fabulous. I was going to ask, who are the benefits there? I think that SecOps world, where 3 or 4 years ago they sort of spun up and looking at that alert fatigue problem they have. There's logs. It's quite retrospective as well. You're looking at things that have already happened, I think, first of all. And it's like organizations don't want more alerts. They want that fine-grained forensic insight right the way back through that food chain of the identity world instead of the endpoint world or the data world, which is siloed again. So I think that persona is a really interesting. But the other thing I just wrote down here, it's that sort of horizontal and vertical sort of Swiss Army knife, isn't it? You need to integrate with as many systems as possible. You need to be able to deploy in a whole host of different landscapes, and you want as much coverage, I guess, as possible.
You want as much coverage because, to take your analogy of the blanket, you want to put the blanket all over yourself, right? Because it's quite cold outside in the wintertime. And so like the way I look at this is that like it does nobody any good if you're just solely deployed in like one environment and you can't touch 60% of the infrastructure. That's not cool, right? And for us, it's also like, if the industry can do one great thing over the next 5 years, it's to finally retire this absolutely ridiculous compliance-driven mindset of identity and IGA. Oh my God, it drives me bonkers. And it drives me bonkers because it's not doing anybody any good. Like, let's just face it and let's just acknowledge it. You can keep throwing more money at the problem, throwing more bodies at the problem, but until you have visibility of every identity everywhere, you're still a sitting duck.
No, that's fair. One quick, very extra mini question in 30 seconds.
Let's do it.
What's your take on the sort of NHI, non-human workload thing? Do we need separate tools? Would that just sit in with you? What's your strategic view there? Not necessarily right now, but a few years.
So not only do we detect NHI I know there's this big debate over NHI service accounts, machine identities. My God, the identity buzzword bingo drives me bonkers, right? But for us, like anything that can access anything else is an identity. It's an account. It's just a key, right? So all of those things, the beauty of our platform is we can discover your service accounts, and our mapping and classification engine maps them back to human owners. Because for us, like if you have, let's say 2,000 people in your organization, but 100,000 accounts or identities scattered across your entire infrastructure, if you can't understand ownership, even of those non-human accounts, again, you're that sitting duck, right? Those are things that behave very differently than user accounts, which gets back at to detection. And if you understand and can build models around how these things are behaving and operating in the wild, what patterns and activity looks like, you can start doing some very, very advanced things that can help you reduce the time it takes to respond to an incident, or ideally to neutralize a threat before it even manifests.
Yeah, I love that. I think longer term, I think you need to link the two. It's imperative, essentially, that you have those
100%
those links. And the NHI workload machine, whatever people want to call it, I'm ambivalent to that. But
break down the silos, Simon. No more silos in identity. Let's have that as a North Star, folks.
I think that's good. I think it's it doesn't really matter whether it's a person or a non-human. If it's malicious, it needs to be dealt with, I think, and that's we don't want any more silos.
Or it could turn malicious in the wrong hands. That's how we view it.
This is it, and this whole issue around sort of intent and attribution. First of all,
Bingo.
Do your attribution. Is it a person? Okay. Is it a thing or a machine or whatever it could be? Do the attribution and then look at the intent via monitoring and everything.
Context. It matters, and that's why you need to see everything, because you can't establish a full picture unless you know the totality of what's going on in the environment. Activity in a Linux farm could in some way be related to what's happening in GCP over here, or what's happening over in your edge infrastructure. That's where Hydden comes in. Connect those dots. Break down the silos.
Good stuff. Yeah, well, that's excellent. The more information you have, I guess the less hidden things become. Let's drop line there. Good stuff. Excellent. This is fascinating stuff, Jay. I think it's a real big problem which needs to be addressed, and it sounds like you've got a really comprehensive understanding of the problem space, which is really, I think, half the battle. It sounds like you're on track to build some exciting features in this space. So Jay, thank you for taking a little bit of time out. Appreciate that, and thank you to our audience for watching. This has been another episode in our vendor introduction series, and we will see you later. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Simon. Cheers.